All right, welcome to everyone. I guess the title kind of looks, the title of the presentation looks like it's a new topic altogether, but it's really not. And so in my last presentation, we had a discussion on the the attention that religion has received in the media, and basically a response to a criticism that was on the lines of, extremists try to kill, and then the modest Muslims do this by supporting them or not speaking out. So basically we answered how we should treat some of the attention that we get in the media. We've already answered that. But now another question comes to mind directly from that. And the question is, why are we going through this? Why would God, if, Tua and I had a discussion last week and clearly made it, he explained to us that God is all-powerful, all-knowledgeable, etc. He has a will to change whatever he wants, basically. So why is it that we're going through this? Why do we see these people, representing us that shouldn't be representing us? Why are we getting this bad attention in the media? Why do we have to go through this difficult time? Especially in the media. I don't think there's a problem, as I discussed there, in the spiritual world, but in the media, why do we have to go through this particular test? So that's why the title of the presentation is how can illnesses and calamities be consistent with the concept of God? In other words, that's another type of calamity, and illnesses is another type of calamity. So it kind of goes under this umbrella here. So any type of test that we may go through, physical, non-physical, an illness, maybe a question about our belief that we may not have been able to answer. It's a bit of a dilemma. Whatever it is that we kind of go through that gives us some trouble in life, why is it that we have to go through that? Why can't God just basically, help us out? Why does he allow this? Okay, so it's a legitimate criticism, in my opinion, and we're going to look at how we would tackle this question. So firstly, we've got to put this question into context, in the sense of, we need to look at, firstly, what do we argue in terms of creation? What is it that we are here for? How do we answer that particular question? And we've already had discussions on this as well, so I'm not going to really extend it. Just wanted to have one slide on it, but we've clearly said in, I think, the presentation prior to a fortnight when I presented, I said that our purpose, can be separated into two here. One is to investigate and to get to know God. That's our first purpose of our creation. And the second purpose is to do trade for the hereafter. Okay, so it's clear what we're here for. It's not for pleasure. It's not for worldly life. We're not here for reward here. We've made this clear in our previous discussion. So once we acquire this knowledge and understand the purpose of our life, I think we can understand why calamities, illnesses, difficult times, in other words, physical, non-physical, that we go through as believers. Is that kind of clear where the question's coming from and what we're trying to answer? Girls, I don't know, you went in and out, but is that kind of... Yeah, missed. So basically, we're continuing from my previous discussion. We tackled how we should deal with the media, the attention that the negative attention that we get in the media, and how we should respond, etc. But then now a question kind of extends from there when they say, if God's all powerful, and religion is superior, etc. Why does he allow us to go through this? Why doesn't he make our tests so easy? Why do we have to suffer this negative consequence in the media by the wrong people representing our religion, etc.? Okay, so we're going to look at, and then in the general title, why do we go through illnesses, calamities? So the first reason here, Bezzaman puts forward, is that as we said, we're here to learn about who He is, to investigate that. As a result, our bodies have been created in a fashion where He basically manifests His names and attributes. Okay, it's like He says it's like a model where He cuts, trims, alters, changes this garment of the body to manifest and make clear His characteristics. Okay, so we've got names, attributes, characteristics, and we need to experience certain things to understand them. I mean, we've had a discussion on this previously as well. I'll just read out what I have there and then kind of elaborate on it. But it says, just as the name of Shafi, which means the healer, makes it necessary that illnesses should exist, so too the name of Rezzaq, which is the provider, requires that famine should exist. Okay, so we can think of all the other feelings, emotions, and experiences in general that we go through as a human being. Why do we need to have the ego? Well, if we don't have the ego, how are we going to understand what it means to own things? If we don't understand what it means to own, to say it's mine. As a result, once we do that, we understand how our owner thinks, how our owner would feel if his property was stolen or mistreated. As he mentioned here, same thing with healing. If you never get ill, how can you understand somebody that heals? Okay? If you never get hungry, how can you understand, those beautiful, food and nourishments and beverages that we consume? Okay? And we've had a discussion again on, we could have just lived on basic foods and beverages. It would have been sufficient for our survival, but we have so much variety. Okay, there's a reason for this. So we need to get hungry. We need to feel like we need to eat so that we can appreciate it, understand the value of those particular things. Okay, so we can go on so on and so forth, right? If we didn't experience life, how are we going to understand the owner of life? The true owner of life. Without these experiences, we won't understand what it means to be these particular, own these particular attributes. Okay, so that's the first reason that we have to go through calamities, illnesses. Now, the second reason that Bedzaman puts forward is that this world is a field of examination. Okay, he says it's an abode of service. Okay, it's not a place for reward. You're here to do work. Okay, so there's no pleasure, no reward, etc. Okay, it's more to do with work. So as a result now, if it was an abode of pleasure, then obviously having illnesses, calamities doesn't make sense. Why should we have those things? It's disrupting our pleasure. But if we're here to do work, and remember I said that we're here to do trade. That's what he means by work here. Then there's a particular reason why illnesses exist. What it basically does is that whatever service, whatever trade you do, it basically multiplies it. Okay, so if you did, if you gave some kind of charity and you were ill, that multiplies. Okay, if you do a prayer, it multiplies because you're ill or you're going through a difficult time or a calamity. Okay, so basically, in that respect, and here I've got a little quote, this changes depending on your illness and your sincerity as well, but at the minimum, each hour's worship becomes equivalent to that of a day. So if you weren't ill, your 24 hours is 24 hours. Now, if you are ill of some kind, and you are patient, he says clearly there that you don't complain, you're patient, okay, and you're sincere, etc., then your 24 hours can become 24 days. Okay, now think of the effect that this is going to have in the hereafter. Obviously here, it probably doesn't seem that large, but if I said to you, if you pray 5 times today, it's going to count for as if you've prayed for a month. If you do it today. I think a lot of people would accept that, right? It's a lot harder to pray for a whole month than to just pray one day and have the 29 days off. Right? It's a lot easier. So whatever worship you do, it's going to multiply. So now the person with the sickness has a significant advantage. He says that in another passage, 8 years can become 80 years. So now you have to live a life of 80 years, right, of doing worship, which you can achieve sometimes. I mean, this is, could be even quicker, but couldn't achieve in 8 years because you've got some type of illness. Now, he then puts forward saying that, well, how can you complain? Well, he's multiplying all your rewards for the hereafter. If you were here for pleasure, yes, you've got a right to complain. But through all the observations we see in this world, how we come and go, and I'm going to have a little reading at the end, but you see our movement, the way our lives are, the way this world works, it's clear that we're not here for pleasure. We're not here to basically, relax and, enjoy ourselves for 80 years. We're here to do work, to do service. Okay, and sicknesses multiply our rewards in the hereafter. He says we should note that there are two kinds of worship. The first one is the obvious type, where we have praying, fasting, giving charity, etc., which is the first type. The second type, he says, is the one afflicted with misfortune or sickness, perceives his own weakness and helplessness. Okay, we've spoken about this ajz and faqr many times. Perceives his sickness, okay, or perceives his weakness, okay, of not being able to change that particular scenario. Then understands his own weakness and helplessness, and then turns to God and seeks refuge in Him and offering a pure form of worship. So basically, by understanding your weakness, your poverty, not being able to change your illness or the calamity that you're going through, allows your worship to even be more sincere. Okay, and just those feelings alone is worship. Okay, so there's two types, and that's what you do during those times of hardship. Now the third one, he basically tries to clarify that you really have no right to complain about any difficult time. Okay, and he gives a bit of an analogy here, but he says that to be able to complain, you must have a right. I mean, I don't know, I own a particular phone, Tuan Abi decides to break the phone. Oh, I have a right, I paid for that phone, it's mine, I can complain, he has to replace it. But now if Stan went up to Tuan Abi and he said, well, you have to pay for the phone, well, Turan could turn around and say, well, wait a second, man, that's not your phone. What's it to you? Right? It's not your business. You don't really have a right to complain there. So he says, how can we have a right to complain for any difficulty? Okay? So let's have a look at the analogy he provides. He says, a person takes a poor man on a tour to the top of a very tall building. On every floor, he gives him a different gift, a different reward. So imagine going up this very tall building. Every level you get to, we're on the 10th level here at RMIT. Imagine at every level I stopped you guys and I gave you a gift, right? And then at the top of this particular building, I gave you the biggest present. Imagine I gave you, I don't know, a nice car or something. So after I've given you the car, I'm expecting this particular response, a thank you, a smile. But I get nothing, and I look at you guys, and all of a sudden you're complaining that I didn't take you to the building next door. It's another RMIT building that's twice the size of this. So you start complaining and saying, mate, why didn't you take me to those? You took some other guys to that one, and you gave me this one, which is 10 levels. That one's 20 levels. Now, if someone did that to you, put yourself in my shoes now, if someone did complain in that scenario, how would you feel? What would your response be? You'd be basically, wait a second, did I take anything from you? Nothing. Every level I've given you a gift, I've given you the biggest gift on the top floor, I've given you this building to use, but let alone saying thank you, you're complaining that it's not bigger. Okay, so when we complain for an illness, a difficult time, in reality, that's the scenario that we're in. Okay, and he says here that in just the same way, a human comes into existence from nothing. Not as a rock, or a tree, or an animal, but a human, and most times sees good health and is the recipient of many bounties. So think of most of us are 30 or 35 here, some may be younger, but think of those years that you've lived. Minimum, we're at least 20 years old here. Think of those 20 years. Has most been good health or bad health? And now, what part of that have you deserved? Are you better off than a rock? Yes. Are you better off than a tree? Yes. Are you better off than other animals? Yes. Now, you're not maybe better off than John, who's richer, who's taller, better looking, I don't know, more intelligent. But why are you comparing yourself to John? Why don't you compare yourself to all those other millions of other animals, billions, all those other plants, those inanimate things that don't live? Why don't you compare yourself to them and say thank you? Okay, so whenever we complain of any difficulty, we're in that scenario that Bezaman just put forward. So despite all this, if he complains and displays impatience because he is not worthy of certain bounties, or because he loses them through wrong choice or abuse, or because he could not obtain them, and then criticizes God, saying, "What have I done for this to happen to me?" you could understand what great ingratitude it would be and what wrong he would commit. Okay, so now when we think of the media, the question that we went through the other fortnight. It's been about a fortnight since I presented last time. Well, doesn't matter what hardship they give us. Doesn't matter who represents us in the wrong way. Okay, doesn't matter how much we're going to suffer in society, as long as we're not doing anything wrong. I'll just wait for them. One sec. Yeah. So, doesn't matter what we go through, personal life. I mean, it's not just the media coverage that we're talking about. That's where the question started from. But even in our personal life, sickness, loss of money, loss of family members, loss of job, loss of property. Like I said, it may be a spiritual question that you couldn't answer. Whatever hardship you go through, you can't complain. You have to be patient, and you have to keep working to fix that situation. And there is no reason to be upset, because if you're sincere, in other sections it's quite clear. If you lose physical property, that all goes to charity. You didn't give charity, maybe you were worried about your money. You lose your car. Well, that $20,000, if you were sincere, will basically go down as giving $20,000 to a charity. Okay, so there is no loss. Okay, and that's what I say towards the end, is that as mentioned in the answer to the previous question, good or bad are all pleasurable when God exists. If God exists in your life, good or bad, they're all positive outcomes. Doesn't matter if you gave the money yourself or you lost property, it's considered as charity. Okay, so the media coverage, we've already answered how we should deal with it. If there's a complaint of why we're going through this, why do we have to make our exams harder? Well, hopefully after today we can understand that 1, we don't have a right to complain. 2, all the services that we do now, I mean, imagine, we go through hard times to come here, we have to sacrifice things, but sometimes it may be that we came here during this hardship, that the reward that we get is worth a year, right? I don't know, you can think of work. If they said, if you come to work today, you don't have to work for the rest of the year. So it's like earning 1 year's salary in 1 day. I don't think you would really be complaining about that. Even if you had the flu and you couldn't get out of bed, I'm sure if they said to you, you only have to work today and you're not going to work for the rest of the year, that you're going to turn up to work, right? And you probably wouldn't even complain. And the same scenario applies here. Every time you're ill, every time you go through a difficult time, think of the rewards that you're receiving. Every act of yours is multiplied in terms of reward. Okay? And it's a chance, don't forget also, it's a chance for you to understand some name of God. You don't realize, but that experience should be teaching you about some name, some attribute, some characteristic of God. Okay? Just like illness speaks about and gets you to understand the name of Shafi, healer. What I want to do now is, it's where I wanted to finish off, but I want to read here just a little section, and you'll see from my discussion how Bedzaman basically incorporates it in his chapter. Here I'm going to read a little section from the flashes. It's the 25th flash, sorry. It's for the sick. But you'll see everything I've discussed here is in these paragraphs. But in a more, it's not, I guess in a point form, like the way I've put it here, but you'll see how he mentions them in each of these paragraphs. So this is the first remedy to a sick person that he provides. Unhappy sick person, do not be anxious, have patience. Your illness is not a malady for you. It is a sort of cure. For life departs like capital. If it yields no fruits, it is wasted. And if it passes in ease and heedlessness, it passes most swiftly. Illness makes the capital of yours yield huge profits. Moreover, it does not allow your life to pass quickly. It restrains it and lengthens it so that it will depart after yielding its fruits. An indication that your life is lengthened through illness is the following, much repeated proverb. The times of calamity are long, the times of happiness most short. And in another passage, he actually says that, he takes that in a different sense. Most people when they say this, they say that, when I'm sick, it's like time never passes. So it feels like your life goes long, but he takes it in a different way here. He says that, he takes it in the fashion that during calamity, your life is long. In other words, if you were sincere for 80 years and you went through, say, some kind of sickness through those 80 years, your life becomes 8,000 years. So your life is actually longer in that sense. That's what he's meaning here. Whereas if you're healthy, your life is actually short because whatever service you provide is only worth how many years you've lived. It doesn't get multiplied. Okay, so again, it's discussing what we mentioned before. Let's look at the second remedy. O ill person who lacks patience, be patient, indeed offer thanks. Your illness may transform each of the minutes of your life into the equivalent of an hour's worship. For worship is of two kinds. One is positive, like the well-known worship of supplication and the 5 daily prayers. The other are negative forms of worship like illness and calamities. By means of these, those afflicted realize their impotence and weakness. They beseech their all-compassionate Creator and take refuge in Him. They manifest worship which is sincere and without hypocrisy. Yes, there is a sound narration stating that life passed in illness is counted as worship for the believer on the condition that he does not complain about God. It is even established by sound narrations and by those who uncover the realities of creation that 1 minute's illness of some who are completely patient and thankful becomes the equivalent of an hour's worship, and a minute's illness of certain perfected men the equivalent of a day's worship. So at times, these elevated individuals, 1 minute can become a day's worship. So an hour becomes 60 days. You can imagine how this multiplies to thousands of years. Okay, a regular lifetime. Thus, you should not complain about an illness which as though transform 1 minute of your life into thousands of minutes and gains for you long life, so you should rather offer thanks. I'll read the third one and we'll stop there. Impatient, sick person. The fact that those who come to this world continuously depart, and the young grow old, and man perpetually revolves amid death and separation testifies that he did not come to this world to enjoy himself and receive pleasure. Moreover, while man is the most perfect, the most elevated of living beings, and the best endowed in regard to members and faculties, through thinking of past pleasures and future pains, he passes only a grievous, troublesome life, lower than the animals. This means that man did not come to this world in order to live in fine manner and pass his life in ease and pleasure. Rather, possessing vast capital, he came here to work and do trade for an eternal, everlasting life. So it's clear that our attributes, our makeup, actually, that's what I mentioned, we've had a discussion on this. It's clear that we're not here for pleasure. Because if we were here for pleasure, we would rather have the abilities of an animal, because it actually numbs certain senses. So you can't think of the past, which causes pain. I mean, once you get to the age of, say, 40, 50, the past becomes painful. Why? You look at your youth and think, wow, look what I had, I don't have anymore. You know, we just saw it. Look at Kobe Bryant now. You know, he just got injured. We saw it today. It's funny, but I'm sure in his inside, he's actually devastated. You know, he still wants to play. He's 36 years old, but his body's crumbling on him. He wants to be 20 years old. But if he was an animal, and a particular type of animal, they can't think of the past. So they still live in pleasure today of what they have. And certain animals can't think of the future. So they don't see, for instance, if we have a world war coming, or we have another, a calamity coming, they can't see that. They can't think of that. So they enjoy their pleasure right now. Okay, much more than what we can. So our abilities show us that we're not here for pleasure. We're here to do trade. The capital given to man is his lifetime. That's all we have. We don't really have anything else. Just our choices and the amount of years that we live here. Had there been no illness, good health and well-being would have caused heedlessness. For they show the world to be pleasant and make the hereafter forgotten. They do not want death and the grave to be thought of. They cause the capital of life to be wasted on trifles. Whereas illness suddenly opens the eyes, it says to the body, you are not immortal. You have not been left on your own devices. You have a duty. Give up your pride. Think of the one who created you. Know that you will enter the grave, so prepare yourself for it. Thus, from this point of view, illness is a guide and advisor that never deceives. It should not be complained about in this respect. Indeed, should be thanked for. And if it is not too severe, patience should be sought to endure it. Okay, so it goes on. There's many remedies, but you can see the context of his recommendations here. It's basically the 3 reasons that I've put forward. So hopefully we've also dealt with that side where the criticism could come that, if God did exist, why would he allow the believers who are devoted to him to go through any type of hardship, let alone the hardship that we're going through the media? Okay, and this applies to other, people, groups that try to act, I guess in their own way. I can't really, I don't want to comment on that if they're sincere or not, but their actions are definitely wrong. So they represent the religion in the wrong way. Why would God allow that? So again, that's some type of calamity, some type of illness that we have to go through. We have no right to complain. It multiplies all our services now. Maybe this service, if there was no difficulty, would not be as useful as it is today. Okay, our rewards might be, if we did 1 year of weekly discussions, it might have been 1 year's worth of rewards for us. But now, the fact that we're going through hard times, it's more difficult to stay on the right path, that our service may be worth 80 years in 1 year. That's all right. I didn't know. Yeah.